We're here to idea everyone, to fire up your curiosity and connect you with the people and ideas that shape our world. Watch, listen, understand, connect, create. Let's move the human story forward together.
Hello and welcome to The Poetry of Science, a podcast which provides insight into new scientific research via the medium of poetry. I'm your host, Dr. Sam Illingworth, and each week I'll be introducing you to some of the latest scientific findings and sharing a selection of science-themed poetry. After all, we could all do with a little bit more poetry in our lives. In this episode, I'll be exploring new research which has investigated the rapid behavioural responses of endangered tigers to major roads during COVID-19 lockdown. Streaks of progress tar the earth, spreading concrete webs that pulse and stretch and shake. Synthetic screens whose serpentine simplicity dulls thundering pause with pockmarked pitch and gouged delight. With cities hushed and traffic calmed, the savage shadows reclaim their light, stepping once more into spaces never ours to keep. This poem is inspired by recent research published in Global Ecology and Conservation, which has used COVID-19 lockdowns to show that vehicle traffic on major roads impedes tiger movements, but also that tigers can respond quickly to reductions in human pressures. The expansion of roads presents a significant and growing threat to endangered species, particularly carnivores who require large habitats and have low reproductive rates and population densities. With fewer than 4,500 tigers remaining in the wild, mainly in South Asia and Southeast Asia, which are facing increasing human development, the need for conservation measures is urgent. In Nepal, the rapid growth of transportation infrastructure in the Terai region, where all of the country's 250 tigers reside, is cause for concern. In particular, the widening of the 639-mile east-west highway, which bisects all tiger-bearing parks and important habitat areas, is particularly alarming for biodiversity conservation. In this new study, researchers used the nationwide lockdown in Nepal during the COVID-19 pandemic as a natural experiment to study the effects of reduced traffic volume along the national highway on the movements of 2 GPS-collared tigers. This was the first systematic study on tigers in Nepal using radiotelemetry or GPS tracking data since the 1980s. The results showed that the absence of traffic during the pandemic lockdown allowed for the tigers to relax their avoidance of roads and cross the highway more easily. These findings provide evidence that vehicle traffic on major roads hinders tiger movements, but tigers can quickly adjust to reduced human pressures. To decrease human disturbances associated with traffic and increase highway permeability for tigers, the researchers recommend enforcing speed limits using signs, speed bumps, speed traps, and strict fines. Now that you've heard the science, let me read the poem to you again. Streaks of progress tar the earth, spreading concrete webs that pulse and stretch and shake. Synthetic screens whose serpentine simplicity dulls thundering pause with pockmarked pitch and gouged delight. With cities hushed and traffic calmed, the savage shadows reclaim their light, stepping once more into spaces never ours to keep. In this section of the podcast, I'd like to share a poem written by another poet on a topic related to the science that has been discussed so far. In this episode, I'll be reading Tiger on the Shoulder by Janet McAdams. Janet McAdams is an American poet of Alabama Creek, Scottish and Irish descent. Born in 1957, she earned her MFA in poetry from the University of Alabama and her PhD in comparative literature from Emory University. Her poetry collections include The Island of Lost Luggage, published in 2000, Feral, published in 2007, and 7 Boxes for the Country After, published in 2016. McAdams' various awards include the Diane Decker Award for Poetry, the American Book Award, and the Storyteller of the Year Award. She is currently the Robert P. Hubbard Professor of Poetry at Kenyon College in the United States. Tiger on the Shoulder by Janet McAdams. We didn't know my mother was driving back to her childhood with a ring of keys, a compass, and a tiger painting in the back seat. Soon enough the tiger was behind the wheel, circling, and each circle spun further and further away from us. When she calls, the tiger has parked the yellow-striped taxi on the highway's rough shoulder. It's time, she says, for this dream to be over. Time to go home, sleep in her own bed. If the compass ever worked, she's forgotten how to read it, and the ring for the keys is broken, the keys melted down for their metal. If I would just call someone and tell him where she is. She has money. She can pay someone to drive her home if only a road sign were in sight, but no. There's only scattered chert and farmland and a man across the road who is not my father. Behind the wheel, the hungry tiger's yellow eyes are slightly open. Behind the wheel, the tiger snacks on the summer of 1970 and the entire works of Iris Murdoch. Caught in his teeth are recipes for chocolate mousse and coq au vin, my brother's first arrest, the one-room schoolroom where her mother taught. So who to call? The tiger, sated for the nonce, has started snoring. The quick drive-by, today disguised as children. The tiger snores away. Thank you for listening to the Poetry of Science.
Thank you very much for being with us for this episode of the Idea Me Show. Idea Me is a global platform. Our mission is to move the human story forward by sharing knowledge of the future. You can find us on all major audio networks at www.radioideame.com, on YouTube and Vimeo. Please subscribe.